नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. The devotees can come forward. Thank you. So we welcome back all the devotees for the ongoing Bhakti-śāstra course. So we are back to the study of Bhagavad Gita as it is. So far we have seen 8 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, followed by we completed Nectar of Instruction, and then just yesterday we completed the Sri Ishopanishad. Now we will continue with the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita from today. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just to do a quick recap of what we have seen in the first 8 chapters, we will just recollect that and then we will just continue with the beginning of the 9th chapter. So right in the first chapter we saw how Arjuna was in a very difficult situation. He was right in the middle of the battlefield, unable to decide what to do, being compassionate. He was bewildered with compassion for his relatives, and he gave the 4 reasons Arjuna put forth to Krishna. He was giving the reason of that compassion has to be shown to the relatives, and he was not interested in enjoyment of this to rule the kingdom. He was also afraid of the sins that he may acquire by engaging in such activities, and also he was very much concerned about what will happen to the family tradition, what will happen to the dynasty which will be destroyed by this war. And then Krishna in the 2nd chapter, he systematically defeats Arjuna's misconceptions, beginning with by giving the knowledge of the difference between the body and spirit. And also Arjuna, we see a significant turn in the 2nd chapter, that Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, being bewildered. He did not know what to do, so he takes shelter of Krishna, and then Krishna, the role changes. Although Krishna is Arjuna's friend, now Arjuna takes a very submissive role of being a servant of Krishna. He accepted Krishna as the spiritual master, and Krishna begins to give transcendental instructions. So Krishna begins with giving the knowledge of Sankhya Yoga, the Sankhya, the difference between the body and spirit, and then Krishna further gives the knowledge of, he advises Arjuna, at least take up this fight by taking up this fight, even if you do not, at least you will go to the heavenly kingdom, because you are doing the role of a Kshatriya, and you take up the role of a Kshatriya, and that is your dharma, you have to take up. Then Krishna further takes him up by giving the knowledge of Buddhi Yoga. That is, Krishna is asking Arjuna to fight for the sake of fighting, not for gain or not for loss. You fight for the sake of fighting, for the sake of dharma you fight. And then Krishna also introduces the Srila Prabhupada refers Buddhi Yoga is not different from devotion. And then Krishna concludes the 2nd chapter with the important instruction of symptoms of a Sthita Pragya, or an advanced devotee. Then Krishna in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, he advises Arjuna on the principles of Karma Yoga. Arjuna was a little bewildered because Krishna gave the advice that you have to Krishna is asking Arjuna to understand the philosophy of Buddhi Yoga, and simultaneously he's asking him to fight. Also, he described all the qualities of Sthita Pragya. So Arjuna was a little bewildered. He was thinking whether to fight or not to fight, whether to just be a sannyasi or I have to fight. So that was the bewilderment Arjuna had, and Krishna very clearly establishes how the Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, it's all part of the same ladder, how it is non-different, and then he is asking Arjuna to work for Krishna, to engage in activity that is far better than renouncing without complete purification of heart. If you renounce, you will remain a mithyachari. So these are the advice Krishna is giving. And then at the end of the third chapter, Krishna is pointing out what is it that is blocking one from making progress, why one is not able to take up to this spiritual path. So Krishna is defining about the karma, he gives how karma is a great enemy, how it devours us, and what are the places, the sitting places of karma. And then with that, in the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita with the transcendental knowledge. And Krishna also in the third chapter, he says you need transcendental knowledge to overcome this karma. So Krishna begins, that's a very important chapter, because that's the chapter when it opens up. Bhagavad Gita opens up with Krishna explaining about the importance of the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna also speaks what is his position. He begins with the transcendental knowledge, and then further Krishna explains how this knowledge purifies one, and Krishna also explains how to get this knowledge, how to acquire this knowledge, what is the process. So Krishna explains about tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. One has to approach the bona fide spiritual master and render service to him with utter humility and ask him right questions in a proper spirit, and then such tattvadarshis will reveal the knowledge. Then and by that knowledge one will be able to see everyone else as part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna also, after speaking this, he also speaks about that one can realize the Paramatma by engaging in Ashtanga Yoga. So he gives hints of Ashtanga Yoga. So then again Arjuna is a little bewildered because so much he glorifies about Jnana, and again he is asking him to, at the end of the fourth chapter, if you see, Krishna is advising Arjuna, so Arjuna, now you wake up and fight. Again, you be clear, be clear of all your doubts, and then with vigor you fight. Again Arjuna is confused. So what do you want me to do? You want me to fight, or you want me to take up renunciation? And again Krishna in the fifth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called as action in Krishna consciousness, or action in Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna again explains how one has to engage in work and devotion. That's what it is. So again Krishna is emphasizing that, and again in this chapter we can see Krishna is establishing that knowing him to be the supreme enjoyer, knowing him to be the master of all the sacrifices, and he is the master of all the planets and the demigods, and also he is the best well-wisher of everyone. If someone knows this, he can be peaceful, he can be happy. Krishna gives this knowledge, and also Krishna speaks about how one can realize the Paramatma. And having given this knowledge of to realize Paramatma, so Krishna gives the other process. So he begins with the Dhyana Yoga in the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speaks about what are all the prerequisites to be engaged in this meditational process. How the mind needs to be controlled, how the senses needs to be controlled, how you need to be in a pure place. So the mechanical process of Ashtanga Yoga was delineated by Krishna. And after speaking about all these things, Arjuna rejects the idea of performing Ashtanga Yoga. He says that he's not able to control his mind, he's not able to focus. So Krishna finally he concludes the chapter with the most important verse, which begins it is the key verse which opens up the process of bhakti. Krishna explains that yoginam api sarvesham adghater antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam samyukta tamomatah. So Krishna says that of all the yogis, one who is always absorbed in me, who is thinking of me, he's the topmost yogi. Krishna begins. So that with that verse, the seventh chapter of the Bhagavad Gita begins, wherein Krishna explains that the knowledge of the Absolute, or the opulence of the Absolute, Krishna is explaining about himself and what are his different energies, and who are the different four devotees who surrender to him, and the asuras who do not surrender to him. He also explains about the position of the demigods, and also the very first verse of the 7th chapter, he begins with the importance of hearing from the Supreme Lord. Tachrunu, it's a very important verse, wherein just by hearing from Krishna, we will get to know our exact position in this material world and how we have to surrender to Krishna. Krishna also begins the 7th chapter with that. Then, keeping that as after having explained about Krishna's opulence, so the goal is Krishna and how to attain Krishna, how to attain that goal. So, attaining the Supreme is the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and also Krishna introduces this end of the 7th chapter about the Antakale, at the time of death. So these words when he used, then Krishna explains about the Antakale. So 2 important verses in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna exactly explains how a person should mold his life so that he can always think of him. And right in the 14th verse of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about Ananya Cheta Satatam. Yomam Smarati Nityashaha. So one should engage in unalloyed devotional service, and in that way one can always remember him. Krishna gives this knowledge. And then what will happen? By that, Tasyaham Sulabhav Partha. Very easily one can be connected with him. So Nitya Yukta Yoginaha. So one will be connected with Krishna by the simple process of pure devotional service. So this verse forms as the link to the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna further glorifies about pure devotional service. He speaks about the Ananya Bhakta. So who is the devotee who is always absorbed in my devotional service, always thinking of me? Who is that person? So Krishna in this chapter, he also speaks about, okay, let's see what are the, we'll see the short description that is given in the Bhagavad Gita as it is about the 9th chapter. It's entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. The Lord Krishna is the Supreme God and the Supreme Object of worship. The soul is eternally related to Him through transcendental devotional service, bhakti. By reviving one's pure devotion, one returns to Krishna in the spiritual realm. So, as we explained, so this verse forms as the link for the for the 9th chapter, Ananya Cheta Satatam, which speaks about without any deviation, our mind and senses absorbed in the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So the first 3 verses of this chapter deals with the king of knowledge. Krishna explains about how this unalloyed devotional service is the king of all the knowledge. Then Krishna further explains about his opulences, Yogam Aishwaram, from verses 4 to 10. Then Krishna deals with who are those Mudas and Asuras. Basically, who are those who worship him and who are those who do not worship him. The Mudas and Asuras. And then the devotees, specifically he glorifies the devotees. Who are his devotees? What are they? How we can identify who is a pure devotee and what are his activities? How he is engaged always in the Lord's service. So that is being discussed. And Krishna also speaks about other worshippers. He specifically speaks about the impersonalists, pantheists, and also the worshippers of the universal form. Krishna again in this chapter speaks about the demigod worshippers. He gives what is the position of the demigod worshippers and what kind of is that worship. That worship is it bona fide? Krishna clarifies that. And then further Krishna glorifies about the pure devotional service. That's why this chapter is very important chapter, the key chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the bhakti is glorified by the Supreme Lord. Okay, so with this background, we will begin the verse, and also we will just try to recollect so far what kind of personalities, what kind of different people who have approached Krishna. We will just try to recollect that. See, there are people who are completely atheistic. There are some people who are little pious. And there are again another category of people who are the jnanis or the yogis, and then there are devotees. And then we can see those who are atheists, they are completely interested only in sense gratification. Their priority is nothing else other than to enjoy the senses that we have seen so far. And also we have seen those who are pious people are interested they come to temple, they may come offer obeisances, but their goal is how God will satisfy my material desires. So that is their desire, that's how they worship God, to enhance, to be happy in this material world, forgetting Krishna. That is their desire. And the Jnanis, what they do, they are interested in the mystic yoga process, or they try to merge themselves with the impersonal Brahman. They are interested in mukti. And whereas the devotee of the Lord, what is his desire? His desire is ananya cheta satatam. Just his only desire is to please Krishna. He has no other desire. He just wants to always please Krishna. He's not interested in heaven or hell, or he's only wherever he is put into swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyartha dharshana. This is the position of a pure devotee. So his only desire is to simply be engaged in the Lord's service. So what is the practice? So the atheists, what is their practice? Their practice is eat, as Charvaka says, somehow or other, steal basmi bhutasya dehasya king punaragamano bhavet. No, you have not seen whether you are going to be born again, or what is going to happen to you after death. So just you somehow or other beg, borrow, steal, you enjoy life. This is their philosophy, this is their practice. So they work hard simply to satisfy the senses. Whereas the pious people they may follow some karma kanda rituals, they may be engaged in, they may come to temple on festival days, some piety is there, but their goal is to also satisfy the senses, but they are ready to follow some rules and regulations. They accept the authority to some extent. In that way, they may gradually make progress. But then, on the other hand, the Jnanis and the Yogis, they control their senses, control their mind. But then their goal is to merge with the impersonal Brahman, or to attain some powers, some different kinds of siddhis. That is their goal. Whereas what the devotee does, he engages in devotional service. So devotional service begins with hearing from a bona fide spiritual master. He hears in parampara. He avoids things which are unfavorable for devotional service. He takes up those things which are favorable for devotional service, and he is absorbed in that way in Krishna's service. So this is the position of a devotee. So what is the destination of those who are atheists, the Nastikavadis? What is their destination? Their destination is they may go into lower forms, isn't it? What Krishna says, Urdhva Moolam, Krishna says that adho gachanti tamasaha, jaganna gunavrittascha adho gachanti tamasaha. How does the verse begin? Urdhvam gachanti sattvasto, madhye tishtanti rajasaha, jaganna gunavrittascha adho gachanti tamasaha. So those who are in lower modes, who do not accept Krishna's supremacy, who are atheists, so their destination will be, they may get into lower forms, or they may go to hell. They will certainly go to hell and undergo punishment. And whereas the person who is doing pious, who is engaged in pious activity, he may go to Swargaloka. And can he be in the Swargaloka all the time happily? Krishna is also going to speak about this in this chapter. Shine punye martya lokam vishanti. Once the punya is all over, he will come back. Then what about this? What is the situation of the Jnanis and the Yogis? We saw in the previous chapter. So the Jnanis and Yogis, they may, a Jnani may enter the Brahman. He may merge with the Brahma Jyoti. And then the Ashtanga Yogis. So they, at the max they can, if they are favored, they may get into Shantarasa. And then what is the situation of the devotees? The devotees, without any effort, Krishna personally takes care of the devotees who are engaged in pure devotional service, who are engaged with full heart, with full sincerity, simply to please Krishna. Their destination is the abode of the Supreme Lord. Based on their relationship, the devotee is got with the Supreme Lord, either in Dasya or Sakya or Vatsalya or in Madhurya. Devotee may reach specific abodes and engage in pure devotional service. So this is the general understanding that we have got so far in these 8 chapters of the Gita. Now further knowledge is being given here. Now we will begin with the text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha idam tute guhyatamam pravakshyam jnanam vijnana sahitam yajñātva mokshase shubhat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. So Krishna here points out that I'm going to give you the most confidential knowledge, and by this confidential knowledge, you will be completely relieved from your material existence. And I'm revealing this knowledge to you because you have a special qualification, and that qualification is you are non-envious. So this is what Krishna is speaking, and let's see what Srila Prabhupada is. So also let us see some of the keywords in this verse. So we can see, Krishna is speaking about jnana, Krishna is speaking about vijnana, and then Krishna is also speaking about guhyatamam, the most confidential, and so he is asking Arjuna to hear his knowledge. So same verse we saw in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna begins with Tachrunu. So here also Krishna is speaking that I'm going to give you this knowledge, you please hear. So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport with the very important point that one can make progress in spiritual life by giving oral reception. The Srimad Bhagavatam, very first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavatam, so much importance is given about the importance of hearing. Everything begins from hearing. So Prabhupada points out that, and also in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can see that in the teachings of Lord Kapila, we can see an important verse which Srila Prabhupada is pointing out here. So if you carefully look at the purport, you will be able to see that's what Srila Prabhupada is pointing out. The hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies. These potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. Do you remember what is the verse Srila Prabhupada is speaking about? Like sometimes, we have discussed before also, sometimes we can see Srila Prabhupada will just put the translation of some verses, or he will just summarize some of the important verses of the Bhagavatam. So do you recollect this verse? Very famous verse, Prabhupada often quotes this. Satang prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata. Satang prasangan, in the association of the devotees, what one has to do, one has to hear about the glories of the Supreme Personality of God, which are very potent, it's very powerful. The process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, it's a very powerful process. It becomes very powerful specifically when we hear it from bona fide devotees, and in the association of devotees we glorify about the Supreme Lord. So that is very Tadjoshanad as apavarga viryaya var apavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. So what is the consequence of that? When you give oral reception like that, then gradually your faith, it builds up, and then you develop taste, and then you develop pure devotion. Step by step you attain this result. So the same theme, the same philosophical concept, what is being said in Kapila's teachings is very systematically explained in 4 or 5 verses. Srila Prabhupada also pointed out that if you remember the 7th chapter, very first verse, at the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada is just giving the summary of those verses from the Bhagavatam, starting with Shinvatam Swakata Krishna. And then what is the last verse is speaking about how this hearing process will completely remove the knots of material bondage because of which we are suffering in this material world. So this is a very powerful process Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, and Srila Prabhupada in the purport he further points out that this cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. Now this is another point to be understood, that we have to hear from the bona fide devotees. We cannot hear from scholars who have no idea of the pure process of devotional service. They do not have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. for them it is an analytical study. It's a theoretical study for them. This is the situation. Srila Prabhupada further glorifies how by the transcendental process of hearing, a devotee is inspired, he engages in the service of the Lord, and how he assimilates knowledge for what? Not as an armchair speculator. He assimilates knowledge to further engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Then he develops, he wants to serve the Lord with pure heart. He wants to engage in the mission of his spiritual master. So that is the motive. So we also remember, often Srila Prabhupada speaks on this point of a proper attitude in devotional service. Krishna also, in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he points out that one should, with body, mind and words, engage in the service of the Lord simply for the purpose of purification. Yogina karma kurvanti. So the devotee engages in the service of the Lord simply for the purpose of purification. So Srila Prabhupada points out here, so a devotee is hearing the potent message of Krishna. What is the goal behind it? Simply to please Krishna. And by that, by the process of trying to please Krishna, he is purified and he makes progress. Now, let's look into this purport. Prabhupada is now summarizing the knowledge that he has given in the previous chapters. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the 2nd and 3rd chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. So, confidential knowledge is given. What is that confidential knowledge? So, the knowledge between the difference between the body and spirit, that knowledge is given. So, that is confidential. So, people do not know that we are not this body, and also the knowledge about that we are the servant of Krishna, that is also there. Then Prabhupada further points out, topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. Because the 7th and 8th chapters, the knowledge of who is Krishna, what is his position, and further glories of Krishna is spoken there. So that becomes more confidential. And and also how one has to surrender and serve. So those knowledges are beginning there. But then this chapter is specifically named as the most confidential knowledge, right? But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. So this is the key word, this is the catch. So this pure devotional service, therefore this is called the most confidential. So pure devotional service is very rare. When we study the nectar of devotion, when we study the characteristics of pure devotion, one of the characteristics of pure devotion is it is very rare, not easily known to everyone. That's why Krishna also speaks about how it is very rare for someone to get to this path of pure devotional service. So that's why in the beginning we were discussing about different kinds of people. Those who are Nastikavadis, those who are atheists, those who are pious people, and then those who are jnanis and yogis, and the devotees. They are very rare souls. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavang mang prapadyade vasudevam sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabhaha. Very rare to see those who are taken full shelter of Supreme Lord Vishnu. Very rare to see them. And then in that also there are gradations, one who is completely absorbed in pure devotion. Okay, so this is the point. Now Srila Prabhupada further goes on to explain about two states of existence, conditional state and on material state of existence. So he says in the conditional states, one is suffering from the material pangs of Adhyatma, Adibhautika and Adidaivika Klesha, and in the liberated state one is completely freed because of having engaged in devotional service. Now in this verse we can see Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in this purport about pure devotional service. So in this verse also this word jnana and vijnana is there. So what is that knowledge which is the most confidential? Why it is most confidential? So we can see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj is answering this question as well. Hiranyakashipu. So he just came to see Prahlad, and then he said, so Prahlad, you went to the school, so what is it that you have learned? Tell me, in essence, what is the knowledge that you have realized? What is that you have learned? So then Prahlad starts to speak about the most famous verse in this entire section of that Bhagavatam. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam Iti Pumsa Arpito Vishnu Bhakti-śāstra Navalakshana Kriyeta Bhagavatyadha Tannanyet Adhitam Uttamam. So he says that, my dear father, so for one who is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, beginning with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, and in that way, by that engagement, he is trying to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So according to me, that is the topmost knowledge one has gained. So this knowledge about devotion, engaging in devotional service, that is the topmost perfection one has attained. This is the knowledge. So here we can see the knowledge that is being referred to here is we should not get confused with the jnana which is discussed in the previous chapter. This jnana refers to pure devotion. We will see in the commentaries also. Srila Prabhupada is also pointing out here. Acharyas are also pointing out the same point. So this jnana refers to pure devotion. So that is the whole point here. So Srila Prabhupada points out. Srila Prabhupada exactly points out this knowledge, idam jnanam, refers to pure devotional service. Prabhupada points out here in this purport. Then he further goes on to explain that by the practice of this Krishna consciousness, when one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand the signs of Krishna. So when one begins to understand the signs of Krishna, when one engages in devotional service. And then the heart is Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtan Hridayantastoi Abhadrani. So all the anarthas, one is purified of all the anarthas. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between the activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands that he is not the body. So we discussed this before also, that by one's own mental speculation or by one's own power of discrimination, one may even come to the stage of identifying and understanding himself to be different from this body. But then, knowledge beyond that, who he is, what is the cause of this creation, is there a creator, what is the relationship with the creator, this knowledge, one cannot just do it by his own mechanical process. It's not possible. Like we heard this example, right? One may, by looking at the painting, one can say that, oh, there is a painter. There are some people who don't even accept that there is a painter. This is another crazy thing. But at least you can understand that there is a painter. But who is a painter? Who painted it? You cannot, right? You cannot find out unless someone tells you, unless the person himself painted it comes and reveals it to us. So Srila Prabhupada here is pointing out that just to know that we are on this body, we are spirit soul, that is not enough. That knowledge in itself is not sufficient, but for the soul to get satisfaction, the Sambandha Jnana has to be invoked. And then by that Sambandha Jnana, one should engage in the process of devotional service, which is Abhidheya, and by the process of devotional service, one will derive pure love of God. So that is the bliss one derives by the process of devotional service. So this has to be understood. So Prabhupada further points out in this purport. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. So Krishna speaks about all those things. And in the chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be further explained. So glories of the Lord means the Lord also is going to explain about the glories of devotional service. Now, let's try to let's try to look into an important point here in this verse, as we discussed. So there are one word is jnana, another word is vijnana, and then another word that we also discussed about is anusuyavi. So let's try to understand jnana. So this knowledge is very important. So as I said this, unless we get this knowledge, this sambandha is established, we will not be able to get the realization. Vijnana will not happen. So unless we know who we are, what is our relationship with this material world, what is our relationship with God, who is that God, what is his name, where does he stay, what are his glories, unless we learn about this, unless we know, so first is theory, and then practical. And then when we put the theory in practice, then you get to know the result. So this is important. So we can see in the Bhagavad Gita, everything is given. And then further, to make the Bhagavad Gita, to understand the Bhagavad Gita, to make it more simple and easy, the Lord himself came as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? And he gave the most simple process, Kevala Ananda Kanda. He gave the most simple and sublime and a blissful and happy process of Krishna consciousness, of chanting the holy names of Krishna, hearing about the glories of Krishna, hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam, engaging in the potent devotional service. So like this, by this engagement, what is the result of it? One becomes realized. The knowledge that he has gained, when he practices, he becomes realized. And then he's satisfied, he becomes happy. Otherwise, what will happen, if you don't have proper understanding of the Sambandha Jnana, if you don't understand, if you simply do something mechanically, we will not be able to derive the bliss or the happiness actually by the practice of devotional service. So, there was one person, there was one couple who got married, and in the marriage life, somehow or other, it did not work out. The wife was always creating a lot of trouble to the husband. Wife was always very rebellious. For whatever the husband proposes, immediately she comes with a counter argument. If he is requesting her to do something, she immediately says, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? I will not do this. So he was very frustrated. So he was in a village. He went to one tantric, and then he went to the tantric, and then he approached him and asked him. He requested him, "Sir, I am having great difficulties. Can you please help me out? This has been a problem for quite long. I am frustrated. I don't know what to do in my life." So tantric, he very patiently heard him, and then he gave him a wand, and a magical wand, some kind of a stick. He gave to him, and then he said, "Okay, rest assured, take this stick. All the problems will be solved. Whenever you go and speak, you lead your normal life. Whenever she revolts or if she is going against you, you just show this stick. Everything, you'll see how everything will work out." So, okay. So he went back. So as usual, day-to-day life was going on. So he was requesting her, "So can you just cook?" So like that, he just started the conversation that day morning. And immediately she said, "Why I have to cook? Why can't you cook?" Then she just started started imposing so many arguments like that. Then he just took the stick and then she showed, and then she just became very pacified, went in, she cooked, and then she, served him, and everything happened. Okay. Then again during the day, then he was requesting her that I'm going to go out, and then you clean the house, and then immediately again another argument that why should I clean? Again he took the wand. So like that, for every small thing, whenever there was a dispute, he was using the wand, and then within a week, he saw that everything is happening very smooth. And then it was going on like that. After a week, still, he was, one day he was just sitting, then he was not feeling happy. He wasn't feeling happy, he was a little morose. So he thought that my problem is solved, whatever I say, she's doing it, but somehow I'm not satisfied. So he was feeling very bad. And then he was just thinking about why it is like this. So if we just think about this incident, we can understand that, just by being some kind of a robo, or by force, if somebody does something, there is no pleasure in that. You cannot. So it's just by some force. So like sometimes people ask this question, why can't Krishna make us into devotees? Yeah, what is the sankalpa matrena? Krishna just by the glance, what is the big thing for him? He can do it himself. But this process of devotion, it's a question of submission. We understand who we are, what is our position, and we submit ourselves to Krishna. And when we submit and when we engage in his service, naturally, it's a natural process, natural phenomena. We become blissful, we become happy with that process. So this is an important philosophical key point we should understand. By this transcendental knowledge, by the engagement in devotional service, the soul derives happiness. The jiva becomes happy because Krishna is happy, because we are engaged in our constitutional position as the eternal servant of Krishna. So we have to put in practice whatever that we heard. Yeah, at the beginning it may be even a little mechanical, but we should have faith in the process and engage in the service of Krishna. Then the jnana becomes vijnana. Then we realize the transcendental knowledge. So we will see in the next verse also, Srila Prabhupada is quoting the incident of Narada Muni, how Narada Muni became a great devotee, pure devotee, simply by engaging in devotional service. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3 chapters, this is being discussed about the life of Narada Muni, how he was engaged in pure devotional service and how just by serving the pure devotees he became pleased. So the point that we need to understand here is that we should not become envious of the Lord. We should favorably engage in his devotional service. You remember in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, what Srila Prabhupada writes about the spirit of devotion, how we should approach. Anybody remembers? Don't tell me introduction was over. Yes, Prabhu? Yes, submissive spirit, and then also one other thing Prabhupada speaks about, how we have to understand Krishna. At least theoretically accept Krishna as Supreme Personality of God, isn't it? Theoretically accept, and then hear from Krishna what he says. Give an oral reception, see what he says. We are hearing from so many people in this material world, right? So many scientists, politicians, so-called philosophers, so many different kinds of authorities in various subjects. We do not know whether it is true or not, but we hear. But when it comes to the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita, we just put it aside. Oh, no, this is all philosophy. But Krishna, this is what Srila Prabhupada points out. With proper attitude, give an oral reception and try to assimilate what Krishna is trying to say and put it in practice. And then you will see that there is the change of heart that will happen. So that's why this is a very scientific Prabhupada, how many times he speaks about it. It's a very scientific process. Srila Prabhupada points out that. So here, a very important qualification is given here. So the important qualification is that one should not be envious of Krishna. So that is pointed out. So if you become envious of Krishna, then what happens? Then we are captured by Maya. We cannot approach the Lord. The knowledge will not be revealed. So that is what Srila Prabhupada in this purport we can see here. He is pointing out that even the most erudite scholars, okay, I'll just read a few more lines before that. The Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. So, Krishna, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is setting the prerequisite to hear the Bhagavad Gita. Anybody remembers what Krishna says? He says, why the Lord spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? Why not to someone else? Why he spoke it to Bhaktosime sakacheti? Rahasyam yedad uttamam. Bhaktosime, priyosime. Prabhupada points out, because you are my devotee, Arjuna. You are very dear to me. Because you are not non-envious. We can see in the commentary also here, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan Prabhu is pointing out that because you are non-envious, Arjuna, you will not criticize me. So I am giving this knowledge to you. You can sometimes see, people think themselves to be very analytical and very intelligent. They say, what is this Krishna is glorifying about himself? You fool, unless Krishna glorifies about himself, how we will know? We cannot know about the Lord unless he speaks about himself. So they think that they're very smart and intelligent. They are now logically they analyze, they think. But it is not, it's such a dullness actually. So unless it's a mercy that the Lord gives about, that he gives a transcendental knowledge, he speaks about himself simply out of his own mercy. Out of compassion he gives this transcendental knowledge to us. Although we were rebellious, we left the Lord on the first instance. We left the Lord, but still the Lord being like the compassionate father, mother and father, how they are caring for the children, the Lord, although we are rebellious, he gives his transcendental knowledge. He comes in various avatars. He sends his pure devotees. And he wants to bring us back to his devotional service. So here it is a very important point. That is, so such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. So that's again being said here that one should accept Krishna to be the supreme personality of Godhead. Okay. So then we can understand about another point, that what happens when we do not submit to Krishna. Many places Srila Prabhupada also is pointing out Krishna Bahirmukha hai Bhogavancha kare. Nikataste Maya Maya tare Jhapatiya dhare. So what happens? Krishna Bahirmukha. You turn your face away from Krishna. Then what happens? Then why we turn our face away from Krishna? Bhogavancha kare. I want to enjoy independent of Krishna. Then what is the result of that? Then immediately, Nikatastha. Nikatastha means Maya is not too far. She's just standing very near. The moment you turn away from Krishna, she just grabs you. And then she gives one slap. Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika. And it's not over. It's just in cycle. It just goes, we get it on and on and on. Every one of us are struggling and suffering in this material world when we want to be when we just try to avoid serving Krishna. So we are in this material world, we suffer, and there is Maya's two energies it acts, Prakshepatmika and Avaranatmika. One is the pulling potency, another one is the covering potency. So both the potency of the Lord, it just keeps us forget the Lord and we suffer in this material world. So Krishna here points out that you hear from me and then you surrender to me, then this you will understand about the glories of devotion. So important. That's why Prabhupada right in the beginning of this purport he is making it very clear that you need to become a devotee of the Lord, and then further the Lord's glories will be revealed. Okay, let's look into the commentaries by the acharyas. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points out the 9th chapter begins to speak about the powers of the Lord required as knowledge in order to perform the pure bhakti. The Gita is the essence of all scriptures, and the essence of the Gita is the middle 6 chapters. The middle of those 6 chapters, the 9th and the 10th chapters, is further an essence of these 6 chapters. Oh, another important point I missed. He says, and amongst the types of bhakti, the supreme position of Kevala bhakti or Shuddha bhakti, which is extremely powerful, not dependent of purity of heart or other elements like jnana, has clearly been shown. So do you remember why he says like this? Purity of heart. We remember. So you want to take up the process of karma and jnana specifically. What is the prerequisite? One should be very pure. But in the process of devotion, one may be from any background, from any situation, doesn't matter. If he takes up to the process of devotional service sincerely, whatever impurities he has got, it will be purified. So that's again another glory, the power of the bhakti. In 3 verses, the Lord praises what he will be describing in the chapter. The jnana, which gives liberation, described in the 2nd, 3rd and other chapters, is guhya or secret. The knowledge which I reveal in the 7th and 8th chapter, which is suitable for attainment of me, the method of knowledge, bhakti, by which Bhagavan is known as guhyatara, more secret. In this chapter, I will speak to you knowledge about Shuddha bhakti, which is by far guhyatama, the most secret. So guhya, guhyatara and guhyatama, the 3 levels of the secretness is revealed in this chapter. Okay. So this I already pointed out just when I spoke now. Srila Bhaladev Vidyabhushan in his commentary, he is pointing out that I speak to you who are devoid of seeing fault in my qualities, anasuyave, who do not see fault in me. You see, he says that because you do not see fault in me, I teach my confidential topics which are hard to understand only out of compassion, but others will criticize saying, you are praising yourself by explaining your powers. He says others will be like this, But you are free of that fault. Knowing this bhakti, you will be liberated from samsara, ashubhat. You will be liberated from samsara. Okay. So we will see some of the quotes from Srila Prabhupada's lecture. Just now we saw from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Guhya is positive, Guhyatara is comparative, and Guhyatamam. So this Brahma Jnana, Brahman is Guhya, is very confidential, because if you achieve Brahma Jnana, immediately you become the most important person within this material world. Brahma Bhuta, Paramatma is Brahmana, Paramatma is Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, situated in everyone's heart. So that is Guhyataram. So Bhagavad Gita 9.1 in New Vrindavan 1975. Okay. Jnana, this most confidential knowledge, it is not sentiment. Vijnana Sahitam, it is science. Just like in scientific knowledge, you must know theoretically and practically. But when you really surrender, that is practical science. That is practical. If you desire to surrender, that is called Sharanagati. Then you have to learn the science how to become surrendered. That is Vijnana. Jnana means theoretical knowledge and Vijnana means practical knowledge. So we have to do it practically, not that I have read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavata, so I have become a devotee. No, you should practically demonstrate in your life that you are actually devotee. That is called Vijnana Sahitam. So that we can see, this is powerful, in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, every one of us are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Beginning with chanting, you see the whole day is packed. We in the morning, we come in the front of the Lord, greet the deities, we offer our obeisances, glorify our spiritual master, engage in kirtana, then we chant japa, then we engage in various services of the Lord, and then we again come together, hear about the glories of Krishna. Every one of us have got a mission to do. We preach, understanding the mission of the Lord, that He wants all the conditioned souls to come back to His service. So we are completely engaged in the service of the Lord. So this is practical devotional service, not that we just simply sit and then do nothing. That's why Prabhupada points out that we don't want people to become armchair speculators. Study this, study that. So after the study, after our practice of Krishna consciousness, we should do solid service to please the mission of Lord Chaitanya, mission of for which our acharyas have come. So that's an important point. Okay, Krishna is very strict, but the devotees are so kind that they go to the demons and pray, kindly hear about Krishna. Krishna says, don't speak this Bhagavad Gita to the non-devotees, because non-devotees will not accept. Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Who will accept unless he is a devotee? The Mayavadi, Karmi, Jnani or Yogi cannot accept. They are envious. I am Krishna, I am God. Why should I surrender to Krishna? Why should I accept Krishna as God? This is the position of Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami. They cannot understand the signs of Krishna. They cannot understand because Krishna does not disclose himself to the non-devotees. But the devotees are so merciful. They go to the abhakta, transgressing the order of Krishna because they are so merciful. All right, Krishna has rejected them. Let me try. This is the position of a bhakta. They are totally unenvious of God. So this is the thing. Krishna doesn't reveal himself to the non-devotees. Mangal Vaishnava Prabhu. What does Krishna say in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Why Krishna doesn't show himself to others? What he says? Why he doesn't show himself to non-devotees? Naham Prakash, thank you very much. Naham Prakash Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavritah. They are covered by the Yogamaya. Krishna. Why Krishna has to reveal himself? He will not show himself. This is the point. Okay. Now Prabhupada is pointing out. Another word is used here. Anasuyave. Asuya means envious, envy. I am speaking to you because you are not envious. This is the qualification. If you are envious of God, why? Who is God? I am God. Why shall I hear from God? I know better than Him. These are enviousness. But Arjuna is not envious. We are envious. This material world is enviousness. I am envious of you. You are envious of me. I cannot see you very opulent. You cannot see me very opulent. That is the reason there is rivalry, competition in this world. Man to man, friend to friend, even father and son. Right? In the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita chapter, we discussed, right? In the very first shloka, Dhritarashtra is showing his envy. He's just immediately splitting it. Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva. Okay. So Prabhupada further is pointing out. The competition is there because we are envious. Simply, I am your neighbor. Suppose I am your neighbor and I become rich. So although there is no enmity, still my neighbors will be envious. Oh, this man has become so rich. I could not become. This is the nature. So if we try to understand Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Being, our first qualification should be, we should not be envious. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the very first, at the beginning only very clearly, Shukadeva Goswami is pointing out, Nirmatsaranam Satam. The qualification of the pure devotees. What is the qualification? Nirmatsaranam. They are completely free from any kind of envy. That is your prerequisite to enter into the Bhagavatam. Otherwise, we will not be able to appreciate the powerful message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We cannot be envious. So, Prabhupada is concluding that, further in the lecture. Therefore, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the beginning it is said that Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmat saranam. So, this is the point. So, Prabhupada points out, again another lecture, Matsarata means to become envious. So, that is one of the qualifications to understand God. Why Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Why not? First of all, answer why not. If you think Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you present who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Either you do not know or you cannot present. If you do not know who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then take it from me, Krishna. And if you know, then you present more efficient, more expert, more powerful, more rich than Krishna. This is practically a challenge. So actually, it has been challenged and it has been scrutinizingly examined. And the verdict is Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda. So Srila Prabhupada is challenging. If you know, we know who is the Supreme Lord. We know his place, his name, his address, the process by which you can go to him. Everything we know. If you do not know, hear from us. Take it, but don't be adamant. Don't be envious. It's being pointed out. So we can see in Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavatam and various other scriptures, the envy is considered to be very bad quality. So in all other qualities, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, everything can be docile in Krishna's service and then can be purified, but not envy. Envy has to be totally given up. There is no need for the jiva to become envious of Krishna, because every jiva has got a unique relationship with Krishna, and the way in which you will please Krishna, I cannot please the way in that way. I cannot please him in that way. The way in which someone else will please Krishna. So everybody, their relationship is permanently there. So no need to become envious. Nobody is going to occupy your position. So that is rest assured. So there is no need to be envious. So simply we have to give this attitude and submit ourselves to Krishna. So it's a very poor attitude. Sometimes we see in the, sometimes when they transport, you can see in the ships, they transport the crab. They say, for export purpose, they know they have big barrels they have. Sometimes they don't cover the top portion. So we wonder why they are not covering the top portion of the barrel. All the crabs will be there. So then the crabs will run away and then it will go out. And I said, don't worry, nothing will happen. When few crabs go away, the next crab will come and pull the other one down. In that way, everybody is intact. Everything will be intact. This is the material world is like this. But simply by taking to the process of Krishna consciousness, it is exactly the opposite. Or rather, this is the proper one. The attitude of envy is opposite in the material world. In the spiritual world, we see if somebody is exceptional in some service, they request, Prabhuji, please, you do this service for Krishna. You cook for Krishna, you sing for Krishna, you decorate for Krishna. So that should be our attitude. So here, very clearly in the very first verse, that is being said. Okay, now let's go to text 2. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So here Krishna is pointing out the importance of this Raja Vidya, the importance of this transcendental knowledge which he is giving to the conditioned souls. Now, just not to forget, the previous verse and these two verses are very important verses to be memorized. Well, we have already given you the set of verses that you need to memorize, but I'm giving these verses very much with respect to the preaching perspective also. It's good to learn these two verses because it clearly establishes the glory of devotional service. Okay, now Srila Prabhupada says it's a very long purport. We may not be able to go through the entire purport, so please, you are requested to study the purports before coming to the class. I know some of you are very regularly doing it. Some of you are not doing it. You can start to do it. Please you just read once and make some points so that when you are in the class, you will be able to relate to what is being discussed in a much better way. Now, Prabhupada systematically in this purport is taking every quality that Krishna is discussing and is elaborating. So we will try to cover some of the important philosophical points that is being spoken here. So Raja Vidya, the king of education, essence of all doctrines and philosophies. Okay. This chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called the king of education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandilya and Vaishvanara, and finally there is Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. Now why this is called as the king of the knowledge? Because the most confidential knowledge is given here. Guhya, Guhyataram, then Guhyatamam. So Prabhupada speaks that that there are various philosophical darshanas are given, and among that finally Vyasadeva refutes all those philosophies with the commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam to the Vedanta Sutra that he has compiled, and the essence of all that knowledge finally is concluded with the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everyone else is his eternal servants, and we are meant to please Krishna by engaging in his transcendental service. Right? Now Prabhupada points out this in the purport. So this confidential knowledge, it culminates in devotional service, that is being pointed out. And then Srila Prabhupada here, he very much stresses the importance of this confidential knowledge, which is missing in the modern day civilization. So let's look into the purport. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. So we just heard this in so many purports, how Srila Prabhupada is speaking that the difference between the body and the soul, this is a very important knowledge. It has to be known. This is a fundamental knowledge without which we cannot make any progress in spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada once, I don't remember the year, he was pointing out that in Kurukshetra, he wanted to start a university. In that university, he wanted so many students from various parts of the world. He wants them to come, he wants them to study and learn the transcendental message of Bhagavad Gita. And right, starting with the subject matter of, this body, we are spirit, soul to the pure devotion. Prabhupada very much wanted that. So we can see here, Prabhupada's has this desire that, we should have universities, and in this, this subject matter should be discussed in detail. But we can see there are so many unnecessary, useless things are being studied, and which is also being pointed out by Shukadeva Goswami. He points out that there are Nrinam Santi Sahasrashah Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam Shrotavyadini Rajendra. He says that there are thousands and thousands of subjects you can hear about. So many topics are there. Well, if you want to know, you can open the newspaper. You can go to the World Wide Web. Go to the Google. There are whatever topic you want. You can just type there. You will get the knowledge there. But what is from the perspective of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and from its pure devotees, this knowledge is useless knowledge because it's going to put us back in the repetition of birth and death. Okay, Srila Prabhupada further points out why this knowledge is confidential. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. So he has given this knowledge of how this body is different from the soul. Now, in this purport, you can see here, Prabhupada is refuting one misconception. There are some people who are having a misconception. What is the misconception? That some people know that the body is destructible and the soul is indestructible, but that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. So this is not our philosophy. That after death, everything we again become chemicals, or everything becomes shunya. That's not the philosophy. We continue to exist. So Prabhupada says, but actually that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within the body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. So this is the key point here. Prabhupada is making the point that you accept that the soul is eternal, but then how it will again, suddenly it will become switched off. How everything will become zero. It's not possible. Soul is eternal means that even after death it will be eternal. Then there should be some eternal activity for the soul. And that knowledge about that eternal activity, which is the devotional service, is the most confidential part of all knowledge. So that is so we have Guhya, so the difference between body and spirit, and then further knowledge about the activity of the soul in connection with Paramatma, and further knowledge about the soul's eternal relationship and the service that he engages in the Bhagavan aspect, which is the Guhyatam, the most confidential knowledge. Okay, now further Prabhupada takes this purport and then he speaks about how this pure devotion is the purest of knowledge. Pavitram idam uttamam. So in this purport, you can see Srila Prabhupada is discussing about how this is the purest form of knowledge. Because why it is pure? Because this devotion is beyond the three modes. It is not influenced by the three modes of material nature. See, when we are captured by the three modes of material nature, then what is happening to us? We are conditioned and we are totally under control of Maya. And we do not know what we are doing. We become like madmen. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya pritiya apranoti. So Rishabhadev also says that one becomes mad. How he becomes mad? Simply in trying to gratify his senses. When one tries to gratify his senses, he is lost. He doesn't know what he is doing. He doesn't see which is dharma, it is adharma, nothing he is seeing. Everything is lost. So, but when someone takes to this process of devotional service, he is immediately purified. So Srila Prabhupada in this purport, he completely discusses about how this bhakti, it purifies. When someone is taking to the process of bhakti, the seed of bhakti, it totally destroys the cycle of sin. Because of ignorance, we are engaged in sinful activities. There is a sinful desire, and because of the sinful desire, then the desire fructifies, and then we engage in sinful activity, and as a result of the sinful activity, there are two effects. One is aprarabdha and prarabdha. So aprarabdha is for the sin that we have committed, we are going to face the consequences which is not manifested. It is an unmanifested state. And then for the sin that we have committed, we are going to get the reaction. The reaction we will get the reaction. Soon we may get the reaction. It will be seen in our act, in our we will be affected by the activity. We will be disturbed in the mind. We will be disturbed in the body. So all these reactions we will be facing. So Prabhupada is pointing out that by engaging in devotional service, one will be able to totally come out of this conditioned state. So we can see here, Srila Prabhupada is quoting from the Padma Purana, aprarabdha palam papam kutang bijam palonmukam kramena iva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram, Uttamam, the purest. So powerful. We will in detail study during the Nectar of Devotion. This is the effect of pure devotional service. What happens? Kleshagni. Immediately we become free from all the suffering. And then it brings all auspiciousness. Because when we become free from all the suffering, when we are freed of the sinful reactions, then what happens? We become fully determined to engage in the service of the Lord. We become enthusiastic to engage in the service of the Lord. What Krishna speaks about that in the Bhagavad Gita, just in the chapters that we have seen so far, when one becomes completely determined in the service of the Lord, what is the prerequisite? Yes, thank you very much. Esham tu antagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrataha. How one can become fully determined when he is freed from all the sinful proclivities. Then one becomes he is completely absorbed, he is super enthusiastic. He is just mind, body, everything is, there is no anishta bhajana, he is completely fixed. Totally, he has crossed the stage of nishta. Anartha nivritti stage he has crossed. Very fixed. So that happens by engagement in pure devotional service. So and then this whole cycle, so starting because of ignorance we are suffering, we will be freed from the ignorance. So that is why this is pavitram, it's a very purifying process, and the topmost process. Why it's topmost process? The jnana cannot do it. The other process, jnana yoga or karma yoga or ashtanga yoga, well, there is purification, but this kutam bijam phalonmukam, in the subtle form, these desires, the sinful proclivities are sitting in our heart, that cannot be destroyed by any process. So in the Bhagavatam gives an example of, when there's a forest fire, the forest fire can burn all the grass, all the plants, but still within a short span of time, this grass or the plant grows. Why? Because the seed, the root is not destroyed. So the root of sinful desires is completely destroyed when one engages in pure devotional service. Aham dunvanti karstena nihara iva bhaskara. Shukadeva Goswami gives an example of the rising of the sun. Vasudeva Bhagavati. So that's by engagement in the service of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. What is the result of it? The result is that all the sinful desires are completely vanquished, and then that's a byproduct actually. We are not so much concerned about that sinful desires has to be desired, so we have to engage in devotional service. But our actual motive is that we want to please the Supreme Lord. We want to please Krishna. We want to develop love for Krishna. So that is the motive of a devotee, and in that motive, what he is doing, then these are all the effects of this pure devotional service. So Prabhupada points out that Uttama means transcendental, Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttama means that which is transcendental to material activities. So one who can see and is familiar with devotional service will know that they are not material activities, they are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. So that's why this is Pavitram Uttamam. Now, Prabhupada goes on to speak about Pratyaksha-avagamam, direct perception of the self by realization. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure, very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. So this is a process, a very powerful process. So one is purified, and we can see that with our own eyes, we can see that by engaging in the transcendental chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we are getting purified. See, we may not know about, we know the different stages of devotional service. There is a stage of, asakti, bhava, prema. But in our conditioned state, we can see how each and every one of us asked this question. Before coming in touch with devotees, before taking up the chanting of Hare Krishna, how we were. What were all the habits that we had. But then, after taking up the process of devotional service, we could see we are at least given up the gross sinful activities, isn't it? We are following 4 regulative principles. Even we can see, if somebody is forcing us, come on now, there is first class, 3 roses tea. Somebody is giving Nescafe, coffee. Even if somebody is offering, we are not interested. Sorry, no interest. Why? Because there is some higher taste we have developed. There is absolutely no interest in it. We can see, it's a proof. It's a what more proof you want? We can see those devotees from the West, from the Western background. They have absolutely no idea of Vedic culture. What is the normal trend to break the 4 regulative principles? That is a normal trend there. They all become, they have become so elevated, so pure. That's the power of devotional service. So, Bhagavatam also points out that this is the power of pure devotional service. There is 3 things it is speaking about. Bhakti, Pareshana Bhava, Viraktir Anyatra. So, by the engagement, for someone, Prapadyamanasya, one who surrenders to the Supreme Lord, Prapadyamanasya, one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord, engaging in devotional service, 3 things happens. He develops devotion, he practically is experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness, then he also simultaneously, he becomes renounced. 2 things are happening when one engages in devotional service. One gains transcendental knowledge, and also one develops detachment from the matter in this material world. So, in the 11th canto, it is being compared to 3 things. Tushti, Pushti, Shuddhapayo. So it is said that Tushti is one becomes satisfied, and then Pushti is one becomes nourished, And Shuddha Payo means one's hunger is, one becomes freed from hunger. So that means we can see when somebody gets one very nice plate of halwa, then what happens? By taking that halwa, immediately there is satisfaction, and after that, if you take halwa for some weeks, then you can see he's well nourished. You can see he becomes healthy, and then he's not hungry at all. So all these three effects are there by taking for one who is surrendering to the Supreme Personality of God. So visibly we can see this. So Srila Prabhupada sometimes used to challenge. You come and take shelter of our Krishna conscious movement. Come and then join us. Wake up with us, chant with us, engage in service, go out on Harinam, distribute books. Immediately you can see devotees become blissful, happy. So we have many times repeated this. It's worth remembering. So it is very easy to identify the devotees because the devotees are always blissful, happy, bright faced. Devotees, when they were distributing books in Chicago airport, I think, the cops had a tough time. They were sometimes the new cops come, they change. So they were, giving reports. You want to figure out who are the Hare Krishnas. Very simple. You will see bright face. They are very effulgent. Immediately you can find out who are the devotees. So Pratyaksha-avagamam dharmyam. Easily you can see that the devotees are seen because the practice is so powerful. Devotional service. Chanting. What is a more powerful process than this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra? Such a powerful process. Immediately, Cheto dharpanam arjanam bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam. There is a purification of the heart. And then it leads to the perfection. Pratipadam purnamrita swadanam. Sarvatma snapanam. Param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtana. All glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtana. Because it leads us to the great ocean of transcendental bliss, and we experience that bliss every step. This is the power of the pure devotional service. So here Srila Prabhupada is also pointing out from the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashascha karmanya abhyasad. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. Now, you please go through the purport very carefully. Prabhupada is very much giving the essence of the power of pure devotional service, how by engaging in this, simply in the service of a pure devotee, how Narada Muni, Narada Muni before, in the Bhagavatam full descriptions are given. Narada Muni was a Gandharva, and then he was, he made an offense. Because of that he was cursed. He was born in this material world. He was born to a maid servant in the second life, and then he simply engaged in the service of the Bhakti Vedantas, great rishis who were there, who were for the Chaturmasya. They were staying in the forest. So he just engaged in the service. He just served them. He took the remnants of the Uchishta Lepan. That famous verse is given here. So how he just pleased the Bhakti Vedantas, and by their mercy, what happened? The entire knowledge of pure devotion was revealed to him. So this is the power of devotional service. We should not think that, now for me to gain devotional service, then I need to I need to have my qualification. There was one Mataji, she was speaking that, how can my son, pick up Krishna consciousness, he didn't go to the school, he should have, I feel that he should be graduated. I said, what it has got to do with Krishna consciousness? Absolutely not required. There is no need to go to the school, no need to go to the college. In fact, it makes us more dull. When we are educated, we become more dull actually, we become atheists. This is what happens. We can see in the modern day students, what is coming out of them, what is happening to them. Anybody who comes out, is graduated, he comes out of the school and becomes graduated, the first question he asks, don't discuss about philosophy or anything, there is no God, we will prove everything with our own power, with our own intelligence. We will show what the world is. So like that they are completely bewildered. So here there is a solid example, we can see from the Bhagavatam, how Narada Muni is thoroughly purified, he became a pure devotee, simply by engaging in devotional service of the Lord. So this Srila Prabhupada is pointing out. So please try to understand. So this is the thing, Pratyaksha, it's completely purifying. We'll just read this. By associating with the sages, Narada got a taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashascha karmanya abhyasat, if one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically and he can understand. This is called Pratyaksha, directly perceived. Okay, Prabhupada is also pointing out in the purport. Okay, here again now Prabhupada speaks about dharmyam, what is the real path of the religion. The word dharmya means the path of religion. Narada was actually a son of maid servant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother, and fortunately his mother rendered some service to the devotees. So Narada also got the opportunity and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religion. So we need to know what is the highest goal of all religion. Bhagavatam points out, Savai pumsang paro dharmo yato bhakti radokshaje ahaituki apratihata yatma suprasidati. So this is the perfect definition of devotional service, that one should know that the Supreme Lord, you cannot capture the Supreme Lord with your blunt material senses. He is yato bhakti adokshaja. He is ada akshaja. He is not just with the blunt senses and mind. You cannot capture him. Then how do we approach him? Then ahaituki apratihata, without any personal motivation and continuously engaging in this service without any, you don't see, for 45 days or 20 days, not like that. Just eternal, the soul's eternal activity is to engage in the service of the Lord. Ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. Then the jiva gets satisfaction, he becomes happy. So the goal of religion is to develop love for God. So that is also being very clearly pointed out here. So here, Prabhupada in the purport is pointing out this, but here, although Narada went to the school, okay, one more point. Religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional service, as we have already discussed in regard to the last verse of the 8th chapter. Vedeshu yagneshu tapashu chaiva daneshu punyam daneshu yat punyam palam pradishtam. So now, then he concludes that of all the processes, devotional service in itself is perfect. And by doing that, you attain all the perfection. But here, although Narada went to the school of the spiritual master and was not educated in the Vedic principles, see how many times Prabhupada is repeating this point. Because we are so much, this idea is ingrained that we need to have some special qualification. No, only qualification is sincerity of heart. Vishaya chadiya sera se majiya mukhe bolo hari hari. Narottam Das Thakur is saying that you should be free from sense gratification and engage in the service of the Lord. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who is in the association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. So this is the point. Simply by engaging in the loving service of the Lord, one can be purified. So then the Krishna conscious practice is very happily performed, susukam. There is no moroseness, there is no difficulty while simply repeating the names of Krishna. Happily you can sing the holy names of Krishna. And is there any difficulty in honoring prasadam? There is no difficulty. It's so blissful process. So Narottam Das Thakur he sings, Lochana Das Thakur he says, Parama Karuna Pahudui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra Sabhay Avatar Saro Shiramani Kevala Ananda Kanda. There is only three things he says, chanting, feasting, then dancing. Right? Prabhupada says three things. You chant and then that's the three things: chanting, dancing, and then feasting. No difficulty at all. So then you just hear little philosophy, then you become a little tired. Again dance, and then you become tired. Honor prasadam. Just go on with your life like this. You become perfect. You go back home, back to Godhead, and then you continue dancing and feasting and pleasing Krishna like this. Okay. So Prabhupada points out that how by simply it's such an easy process that Krishna is not demanding anything from us. He's not asking us to stand upside down, keep trying to hold the nose like this or any other difficult process. He's simply asking us, even you just offer me a flower, a water, a leaf, I'm completely pleased. But he's saying that, he's requesting that simply with devotion you need to offer. That's what is being pointed out. And we can see that because his devotional service is so happily performed, even the joy of Krishna consciousness, simply the smell that is coming out from Tulasi attracted the Kumaras. There is one devotee, I just heard how he joined the Hare Krishna movement. He just came to our temple. He just saw a beautiful decoration of the deities, and then that's the smell of the incense. He was just completely, oh, where am I? What is this place? He was completely in great bliss, so happy and satisfied. And then when devotees came and spoke, he heard, he started reading books, honoring prasadam, he became devotee. So the point that I'm just trying to relate here is that it's very happily performed, it's very joyfully performed. So Srila Prabhupada further points out that in the conclusion of this purport, Prabhupada is pointing out that this devotional service doesn't end with this body. The devotional service continues. And it's a very important philosophical point that after death, now that everything is finished, our service to the Lord continues. Completely the Mayavad idea is refuted, that we become one or everything is finished after this life. So Prabhupada refutes that idea that after liberation, we continue to engage in devotional service. Moksham Vishwangri Labham. This is the definition, understanding of our liberation, that we continue to engage in the service of the Lord. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. Just one thing to point out is amazingly Prabhupada is presenting here. We can see here, he says, it is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. Okay, devotional service is eternally existing. Okay, then further Prabhupada points out that actual devotional service continues even after liberation. Even after liberation, the actual devotional service continues. That means what? In the purified state, you continue to engage in devotional service. Then one more idea Prabhupada is pointing out that although they sometimes take to the so-called devotional service, their idea is that that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they will become liberated, they will become one with God. So this whole misconception that you will become one with God, that's completely refuted here in this purport by Prabhupada. Then Prabhupada further points out that actual devotional service begins after liberation, he says. So this what is that? That means that other things are not, no. The more a person is purified, the more a person becomes is pure, then what happens? He is able to please Krishna in a much better way, because he knows how to please the Lord and being trained by the devotional service. So also Srila Prabhupada refers to the famous Bhagavatam verse that what happens when one engages in devotional service, is purified of his anarthas, he comes out of the three modes, then evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogatah stitam satte prasidati, he is fixed in the goodness. So this is what happens. So Prabhupada concludes, evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogatah, when one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. Okay, there are more to be said, but I am out of time. I'm very sorry about it. Let me just something important I'd like to point out. Okay. Here Srila Vishwanath Thakur is pointing out one more in his commentary. Unlike karma, jnana and other processes, bhakti is easy to execute. Susukham kartum. There are no extreme pains to the body, voice or mind by renunciation of the senses. Since bhakti makes use of the ears and other senses as principal elements in hearing, chanting and other processes. So we have solid process of engaging our senses. In other processes we know, very difficult, to sit and then do the tapasya process is very difficult, but it's a simple yet very powerful process. Okay, here is an interesting point Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in his lecture. There is another interpretation. Raja Vidya and Raja Guhyam mean knowledge belonging to the kings and secret belongings to the kings. This knowledge belongs to persons like kings who are God generous and compassionate and thus consider even heaven insignificant. It is not the knowledge of those with selfish hearts worshipping devatas with desire for quick gain of sons or wealth. Just as kings do not keep their treasures secret but attentively keep their personal mantras secret, so the devotee should keep this knowledge secret with great care. Though they do not keep other types of knowledge secret, the rest of the interpretation would be the same as above. So, in that way, the knowledge is kept secret, he says. But then we also know that the devotees, although they just go out and give this knowledge to others. Prabhupada again points out that another example, okay, here it is. It is not theoretical. You understand that your fever is diminishing, you are getting strength. Then it is pratyaksha avagam, directly perceived. Not that you go to your doctor and gives you a medicine and you do not understand whether you are being cured or you are in the same position. No, that is not. You will feel. Another example is just like if you eat, then you will feel pleasure, strength, satisfaction. Not that you are going to be eating continually, but no such thing. No, that will be understood automatically. Similarly, pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam. So he says immediately you feel hunger is being, you have become freed from the hunger and then you feel satisfaction and pleasure. Okay. Yeah, there are more quotes, but I just stop here. Okay, this quote I'll just read. It's interesting. Prarabdha means now receive the result. So in this way we are sowing some seeds. That will take its reaction, either in this body or another body. It takes time to fructify. But if we act in Krishna consciousness, then it is just like fried seed. Fried seed, if you sow in a land, it will not fructify. Fried seed. So this fried seed, our activities can be made a fried seed by the fire of Krishna consciousness. So there will be no reaction. Pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam susukam kartum avyayam. Okay, we will stop here. So please tomorrow try to read next 10 verses so that we will continue. Sorry, I didn't have time for any questions today. We will plan tomorrow's day to finish the session on time. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please send it to the WhatsApp group. So we will answer those questions. And one other point for those who have yesterday, the issue of the exam results will be discussed today evening. 7 o'clock today evening, 7 p.m. You please come online for the answers to be discussed and corrected. And also, Ram Kumar Prabhu had given you the essay title. So you have 3 days to submit. Wednesday is the last day for submitting the essays. So please take it seriously. Don't do it like you did for the Nectar of Instruction essays. This time we want the essays on time. Also, the Nectar of Instruction essays are corrected. When we get time, we will announce you the results. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Advaita Acharya Appearance Day Mahotsav ki jai. Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.